As the next potential comptroller in Maryland, what do you think are some unique challenges that you would face?
We need to set ourselves up right now to really build financially resilient families that are able to be in a place to withstand economic challenges moving forward, right?
Okay, Short Issues Podcast. We are here June 9th with a different type of candidate. We're not doing a governor or an AG. We have a comptroller candidate, Brooke Lierman. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, great. Let's start off by just talking about the weather real quick. I'm in St. Michael's, as I just told you. Where are you at and what weather are you experiencing outside?
I am in Baltimore City this morning. I just dropped my kids off for their last days of school, and it is 70s, mid 70s, pretty sunny. It feels like it's going to be a nice early June day.
Cool, cool. Do
Yeah.
you guys have any plans for the weekend considering it's last day of school and all that? You celebrating?
Well, since I am 40 days out from election day, my plans are all about the campaign trail right now. So we have lots of campaign events this weekend, lots of door knocks that we'll be launching, events that we'll be going to, fundraising events, meet and greets. And my kids are going to visit their grandparents in rural New Hampshire. So they are very excited about that.
Oh, nice. I went to UMass Amherst, so
Oh,
I have an affection for the Northeast. In particular, we were close to the New Hampshire border,
yeah,
and
that's
really
great.
enjoyed
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband is from Keene, New Hampshire.
Oh no way,
Um,
that's not far away from the border at all. Yeah, yeah, I've been keen.
yep.
Hmm.
Yep. So his parents are still there in a beautiful old farmhouse, and my kids are going to go up there for a few days and run around and enjoy the outdoors before camp coming back to start their camps this summer.
Oh, that sounds wicked cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I talked to somebody from Maine recently who said that the moose population up there is suffering a lot in recent years. Have you heard anything about that?
There was just a story on the radio about this actually,
Oh yeah.
and the moose population decline. Yes, it's a real thing. And I guess there's just like higher mortality rates among adults. And they're not having as many baby moose. So it's sad. They're an important part of the ecosystem.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's a
absolutely, absolutely. And they're so beautiful and majestic when you see them in
they
real
are.
life.
Yep. Agreed. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, let's get into the meat of it. So the question that you answer probably every day of your life: what does a comptroller do, and why is it spelled and pronounced that way?
It's a great question. So yes, I'm Brooke Lierman. I'm a disability and civil rights attorney. I'm a mom of two, and I'm a state delegate right now. I've represented part of Baltimore for the past two terms, 8 years, and I'm running to be the next state comptroller because, of course, our current comptroller, Peter Francho, is running for governor. So there is an open seat, which does not happen very often for the comptroller's office. In fact, there has not been a truly open seat for state comptroller since 1998. So it has been quite a while. So the comptroller, yes, that is absolutely the number one question I get on the campaign trail. And in fact, I get it so often, I even made a video, a little cartoon, what is the comptroller? And on my website, if you go to my website, brookelearman.com, and you go to the priorities page, you'll see a little page that's what does the comptroller do anyway? Because it is, it's an incredibly important office, but it's hard to spell and hard to know what it does. So here are the three things that I like to remind people that the comptroller does. Number one, the comptroller is one of only three independently elected statewide officers that we have, right? Other states have more than three. We only have three. We have the governor, the attorney general, and the comptroller. And the comptroller is really like the elected CFO of the state of Maryland. It sees every dollar in and every dollar out. And so it's really essential that we have a statewide elected official, and I'm looking, excited to be able to fill this role, who can be a voice on the economic challenges and the income-based issues that are really affecting Maryland families, communities, and small businesses around the state, and look at the larger picture, right? the challenge that climate change, the economic challenge that climate change is going to bring, not just to the shore, but to all over Maryland, right? The challenge of the racial wealth divide in the state of Maryland, the challenge of ensuring that we are fully funding our public schools, right, which are so essential to our future economic growth and potential. So I'm excited to be that statewide voice. Number two, the comptroller sits on a lot of very important state boards, not something that you think about, but that actually really matters in a well-functioning state government. So two I will mention is the State Retirement and Pension Board and the Board of Public Works. So the State Retirement and Pension Board oversees $70 billion of investment, give or take, for over 415,000 state retirees. So for the past 8 years, I have served on the Joint Committee on Pensions. And in fact, I now chair that Joint Committee. So I have extensive background and knowledge and understanding of what our pension system is doing well and what we need to keep improving on. I'm really proud that this year in the General Assembly, I led the charge, and we were the first state in the nation to fully divest our pension fund from Russia, which was essential to ensuring that we're safeguarding our assets for our retirees from declining value if we'd kept them in Russian-held in Russian investments. And of course, then other states began to follow suit, which was important. And then there's the Board of Public Works, right? The Board of Public Works is just essential. It is this fascinating body. It's 3 people: the governor, the treasurer, and the comptroller. And the Board of Public Works is unique in all of state government in America. In other states, it's just the governor who signs off on things, or one other body, one other person, but here it's this board that signs off on all major expenditures. So whether we're buying, coronavirus test kits, or, contracting for new highways, or building new schools, or doing, broadband, anything that the state is spending money on, those contracts, IT contracts, anything, it all goes through and must be approved by the Board of Public Works. And the essential thing about the Board of Public Works is its structure as well. The governor, of course, generally answers to the agencies because the governor appoints the agency heads. The treasurer is appointed by the General Assembly. And so the comptroller is the people's advocate. And I'm an attorney. I've been an advocate for my clients. I've been an advocate for my constituents, and I'm looking forward to being the advocate for Maryland, for all of Maryland, on the Board of Public Works, to being truly the people's advocate to ensure that we are getting best value for our tax dollars. It's just essential. And then the final role of the state comptroller, the third and final, is that I'm running to be your next tax collector. Sorry about that. It must be said, though. Okay. But there too, there's so much great work that we can do to really modernize our systems, to make it easier to pay taxes, to ensure that the wealthiest, the biggest corporations are truly paying their fair share. While on the other hand, ensuring that people who don't have a lot of extra time or money to spend on accountants or tax attorneys, that they get what's owed to them. One example of that is that we passed the largest expansion of the earned income tax credit in America last year, but almost a quarter of families who qualify for it in Maryland aren't receiving it because they don't know it's owed to them. So it's really essential that we create a taxpayer advocate office and we do more outreach. So I will say, to summarize, the comptroller's office is the first office in our state government that sees the numbers that really tell the story of how Maryland families and communities and businesses are doing. And that is the state comptroller.
Okay, wow. There's actually a lot of interesting things in there. I didn't know, for example, that our pensions were tied in with Russian assets in any way. I never heard that.
Yeah, so we have assets, we have investments, we had investments all over the world. Mm-hmm. And as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, I sent an email, I think it was like a Sunday evening. I sent an email to our chief investment officer and the executive director of the state pension system. And I said, hey, what is the value of the assets that we have invested in Russia? And let's get out of there. And so we held an emergency hearing just a couple of days later to go over all of the assets that we had. We said, we've got to get out of here. We put in legislation to divest immediately in cooperation with our pension fund to do that. And we passed it totally bipartisan. It might have even been unanimous. in both the House and the Senate and got that done. And we were
Oh,
a real leader on that effort, and it was important to do.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I kind of characterize controllers as being part of the state bureaucracy. They're the state tax collector, but it's very important that they're very transparent about how they disperse funds and how they collect taxes and what the state finances look like, so on and so forth. So I would consider transparency to be pretty high on the qualities that a good comptroller has. Are there any other qualities that you think should go into that?
I think it's really essential to understand how government works, but also essential to make sure that you are good at building coalitions, bringing people together to be a good listener. I really think that being a leader means being a listener. You need to understand what's working and what's not in state government for the people of Maryland, whether you're a small business owner, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a student or a teacher, whoever you are. We need to know what's working and what's not, because the comptroller's office is an important place where we can really make government work better for people. So I've been a real leader in the House of Delegates on building coalitions to get big things done, like bringing people together to help tackle the digital divide in the state. When the pandemic hit, it became even more obvious how disconnected hundreds of thousands of households around the state were from internet, right? Which is so like foundational to living and surviving in America right now. And so I brought together over 60 groups, and we led the charge to pass legislation to create the Office of Statewide Broadband, so that we could have an office totally dedicated to working with local governments to get people connected. So I think you really need somebody who's dedicated to bringing people together to identify challenges, brainstorm solutions, and then put the weight of the office behind those solutions. I totally agree with you on transparency as well.
Mhm.
I've loved being a leader on opening up government and strengthening our Public Information Act laws, our PIA laws, which is something that I've done in the House of Delegates. And I have a lot of ideas about how we can make sure that anybody who wants to can follow the money trail in Maryland, right? Having a website, I really do think that our records should be an open book. So having sort of openbookmaryland.gov, where you can go online and see, where your tax dollars are going, the division, how things are being spent, follow contracts, and all of that, I think is really essential.
Okay. Um, as the next potential comptroller in Maryland, what do you think are some unique challenges that you would face?
Sure. Well, I think there are a couple things. First is we are coming out of course, a global pandemic when we had a huge flight from the workforce, right? 2 million women, for instance, across the country left the workforce. And businesses still today are really struggling to hire. And on the other end, unions are being really strengthened, which is great because finally workers have some power to ensure that they can, earn what they're worth. But I think there is a question of, are we in this? Are we in a bubble? Are we going into a recession as the Fed raises interest rates? Like, what does business look like from here through the next 5 years? So there are just there's a lot of open-ended questions right now that I don't think anybody has the answer to, which means that we need to set ourselves up right now to really build financially resilient families that are able to be in a place to withstand economic challenges moving forward, right? Two, is of course that we have all of this money from the federal government coming in. So because of the Federal Infrastructure Act that was passed, we have more money coming in than at any other time since the New Deal. A huge
Mhm.
amount of infrastructure spending, which is phenomenal. We have to position ourselves, especially on the Board of Public Works, to make sure that we're spending that money in a way that truly changes outcomes for the better for communities and small businesses around the state. And we have to do that immediately because the money's coming now, right? We don't have
Mhm.
time to waste. So, if we're going to use that money to build a new school, we need to make sure that that new school is being built, the architects, the landscape architects, the construction firms, that it's local labor, right? Local businesses Maybe that means unbundling some of the huge contracts so that if there's a contract that's being performed on the Eastern Shore, a business owned on the, by people on the Eastern Shore gets that contract, right? So really trying to use that money to build generational wealth in Maryland, including helping us tackle the racial wealth divide by, stopping sort of waivers of our minority business enterprises. So like making sure that we're awarding contracts to companies here in Maryland. And then we also have to make sure that we're prepared for the challenge of climate change. This is going to cost our state an incredible amount of money. I was in Chestertown recently, or in the fall, I guess, and we were talking about their public boat slips. And it cost, I want to say $7 million to raise like 20 boat slips, 2 feet. Just an incredible amount of money. And so it's really essential that when we're spending this federal money coming in, that we're spending it in a way that builds climate resilient structures. That new school, let's not put it in a floodplain. Let's put solar panels on top, make it net zero. But then also doing a climate audit to understand how many of our public buildings and facilities are at risk, due to rising waters or bigger storms. So I think there's, a number of things that we need to be on the lookout for moving forward.
Okay, so interesting. So you said some stuff about making infrastructure more green to combat climate change. Do you think, for example, in the instance of the Bay Bridge, what would be some ways to greenify a new bridge project? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think first we have to think about so our transportation sector is responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than any other sector. I mean, far and away, it's transportation. So we have to figure out how we can more efficiently move people, not just cars, right? And so I think we need to be very serious and intentional about thinking through how MTA, the Maryland Transit Administration, runs commuter buses, runs more regular transit to get people from the shore, from the Eastern Shore to the Western Shore, to areas of work and opportunity, so that not everybody needs to take a single-use vehicle across the shore or across the bridge, right? I mean, I think that is really rethinking the role of public transit to get back and forth across the bridge is really essential. Not that people are going to use public transit for every trip they ever take, but making sure that it's a viable and reliable alternative is essential. I mean, if you think about, I have, friends all over the state of Maryland, and I'm constantly hearing, gosh, I wish I could take a bus to Ocean City. Gosh, why can't I take a bus? Why isn't there a regular bus on Friday afternoons to get to Easton, right? Like, to just get to some place where people want to go. I mean, that exists in New York and Boston and feel like many of, Philly, getting to Atlantic City or getting down to some of the other beaches. But we have never invested in that type of infrastructure. And it is essential that we do to get a lot of those cars off the road, right? You get as many cars off the road as you can so that people who truly have to drive can. And I think, so when we're thinking about another bridge or another bay crossing, we have to think about not just the bridge itself, but who is going over it and how are they getting from point A to point B.
Good. Yeah, I've said that too. I everyone's over here is either a pro bridger or an anti bridger. I'm kind of like, if the bridge doesn't have like a light rail upgrade to it or any sort of component like that, it's not an upgrade. It's just a perpetuation of the problem,
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah. Kind of on that point, it's kind of good to talk about the gas tax holiday, which Hogan's been trying to do again. It seems like some Baltimore County people are against it. What's your conjecture about the gas tax holiday? Are there any unforeseen consequences to doing this again or to doing it in the first time?
It's a really important question. And the first thing to say is that families are really hurting right now, right? I mean, you go to the grocery store, everything's more expensive. At the gas pump, everything's more expensive. It's a huge problem. And it means that any recent wage gains that workers have made are just swallowed up by inflation. And so people end up getting behind again. And it's not okay. And we need more, we need to be there for working families. So I voted for the gas tax holiday, and an important part of that gas tax holiday was ensuring that we were filling the transportation trust fund from the general fund, because it's essential that we both give families relief at the gas pump while also not bankrupting the transportation trust fund so that we can continue to repair roads and build infrastructure, right? So, I would have supported expanding the gas tax holiday, as long as we make sure that we are not bankrupting the transportation trust fund, because people really need relief. I mean, people are hurting.
Yeah, that was what I meant, what I was implying by unforeseen consequences, because everybody loves tax cuts. Everyone applauds those, and I can definitely understand why at this current time there's a reason for it. But I'm worried that we're cutting the legs out from underneath of our later funding for a light rail or the purple line or the red line or something like that. I mean, is that being eroded away at all?
No, not right now, because we still have the transportation trust fund in place. We are fully funding it. It's in a lockbox, so it cannot be rated. And so we have the money there that we need. But at the same time, if we are able to pass an extension of the gas tax holiday ever, if we were to call it, if the president and speaker were to call a special session, if the governor were to do it in a state of emergency and lower the gas tax rate, then we would want to make sure that we fill it with the general fund dollars.
Okay. What are some things comptroller can do to rural areas as opposed to urban areas as to where you are? How would you act differently?
Well, I don't know that yeah. I mean, I think, look, different areas of the state and different families and different businesses all have different challenges, right? But at the end of the day, they're all looking to thrive, right? We're all looking to make sure that we have, everybody has internet. People have, good, there are good companies, there's great schools, good infrastructure. So, but I think first and foremost for our rural counties, speaking as you're over on the shore, absolutely universal broadband is essential, right?
Thank you.
I mean, I think the pandemic really exposed how critical, affordable, reliable access to the internet is for all Marylanders. And without broadband, families are simply unable to access online school, telehealth appointments, apply for benefits, work remotely, access goods and services. Our farmers, farmers, their equipment now all runs on the internet, right? It's all cloud-based, much of it. So it's really essential. Will certainly be calling for leveraging our federal and state dollars and private sector collaboration to build the infrastructure that we need to connect every household. That is why I started by creating the Office of State Broadband. I will advocate for additional funding to ensure complete connectivity, work with state partners to create digital literacy programs, and then work with our local governments around the state to offer them the support of the comptroller's office if they want to do things like municipal broadband, right? Not just simply bringing in a private company, but doing this on their own, and working in collaboration with other groups and companies. Two, we have to support our rural schools, right? By updating aging infrastructure, investing in our rural teachers, ensuring rural schools fully benefit from the blueprint for Maryland's future, which was the education legislation that we passed 2 years ago.
Kerwin,
So
yeah.
schools are huge, right? And along with schools, healthcare. I mean, you can't expect people to want to live and grow old in counties where they have to drive an hour to get to or an hour and a half to get to a doctor, right? I mean, there are counties on the shore where there's not a single OBGYN. It's hard to ask a family or a new couple to buy a home when they can't access going to going to an OBGYN and having a baby, right? I don't know. I still remember when I was pregnant the first time, and at the very end, you're going to the doctor all the time. So it's a lot. And so we need to make sure that the state is being a partner in ensuring good healthcare access to our rural counties. And then finally, I think rural entrepreneurship, so important, right? Today's entrepreneurs are tomorrow's employers, and communities are just more resilient and really better able to weather recessions when they have a diverse economic base with lots of different types of businesses. And so rather than just only focusing on large employers in rural areas, I think we need to support real local efforts to develop an ecosystem that can support entrepreneurs, right? Having a statewide rural entrepreneurship network to connect rural entrepreneurs to resources, leveraging state financing programs, like those at, I think it's, Medco, to support, downtown innovation hubs in a Salisbury or in Easton or in Ocean City or Chestertown or, wherever. So really just working with, and then working with the Comptroller's office on what do rural entrepreneurs need from the Comptroller's office? How can we make it more accessible to them? So I think there are a number of things that we can do from my office to make sure that we're being present and proactive to help our rural counties.
Okay. So as far as I understand, Maryland has only ever had Democrat comptrollers. Is that correct? I think so.
I think maybe like over 100 years ago, we had a Republican
Oh,
comptroller.
really? Well, it was a different
Yeah.
party back then.
It's
So
been a long time. It's been a long time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I wonder, as a voter, what would the consequences of having Barry Glassman or a Republican comptroller elected? What would the difference between them and you be?
I mean, I think we have a different vision of how the office should support families, communities, and small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the comptroller's office is necessarily about partisan politics. I think it's about making government work better. And I have a track record of making government work better for people, and being present and proactive in communities to really get things done. And so, my vision for the comptroller's office is truly being a people's advocate, getting in the weeds, being present in communities around the state, to ensure that people have someone on their side, right? Who is looking out for them, having a taxpayer advocate office, ensuring we're updating our systems to make sure that people can qualify and they get the tax credits that are owed to them, going after big corporations that aren't paying their fair share, right? I mean, I haven't seen, that's really essential to me. And it's something that I have been doing. I'm a lawyer for low wage workers now. I sue big companies all the time who aren't paying their workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know how to get that done, and I know how important it is. So I believe the comptroller's office is a place that we have to, really be an advocate for the people of Maryland. And I have a track record of doing that and getting it done.
Yeah, I'm glad you illustrated those points. Because I guess on paper a comptroller is a state accountant, but it seems like you guys have to engage in some partisan politics, and kind of recently with Hogan not signing off on the funds being released to Peter Franchot and such like that. So it kind of seems like you guys have to be partisan sometimes. Could you comment
Yeah,
on that?
I don't know that it's necessary. I don't know that it's, I mean, we can call it partisan, but I think it's just about looking at contracts and deciding if they're a good deal for the Maryland people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're not. And it's not about a Democrat or Republican. It's like, this is not a good deal for Marylanders. This is just a bad idea. Or like, this isn't a good enough value for our tax dollars, right? We can do better, and we should demand that we do better. So, at the end of the day, right, people need an advocate. They need to know somebody's looking out for them and calling a spade, right? And that's why I'm running, because we don't have time. Families are hurting. Small businesses need help. And we have this federal money coming in, and we have to be transparent, hold ourselves accountable, and do what's right for the people of Maryland, including the people of the Eastern Shore, who cannot be left behind.
Cool. Yeah. Getting back to what I just said about the Franchot Hogan situation, could you describe what's going on with that for people that don't know what the dissonance is between them? Why is Hogan not signing off on these abortion training funds?
Sure. So the legislature this year passed a large bill called the Abortion Access Act. And this bill is about ensuring that women who need an abortion can have one, right? Or women who want an abortion can have one. Right now, there are a number of insurance providers who do not cover abortion care. And so we said, nope, not in Maryland. If you're providing insurance in Maryland, you are providing coverage for abortion care. And we also, like we were talking about earlier, there's a real disparity in access to doctors in the state of Maryland. And so there are not enough doctors around the state to sometimes be accessible to women who need abortion care. And so we said, you know what, midwives, they help deliver babies, nurse practitioners, they help deliver babies. These practitioners should be able to be trained to administer, abortion pills or to help with abortions or to carry them out, as long as they're well trained and capable and able to do it. And so, that was a program that we passed in the legislature this year. And we passed along with it we sectioned off funding in the budget to allow for that training to happen. And the Hogan administration has refused to administer that, to release that funding for that training. So it was available. It should have been available on July 1st. He's refused to release it. And so that program of providing training for additional healthcare professionals will not be available for a year until next July 1st. So, which is, it's unfortunate. We believe that reproductive healthcare should be accessible to all women. And so it's unfortunate that the governor doesn't agree with that.
Yeah. For anyone who hasn't seen, I suggest watching my interview with Anthony Brown, because we went into this a little bit, and he basically said that Hogan is not following his pledge to follow the law, because he said that abortion is settled law in Maryland and that I would just follow the law, and he obviously is not doing that. So, important to note.
Yep.
What can a comptroller do to fight inflation? Can you do anything, or is it all legislative?
So inflation is a huge challenge right now. And the comptroller, I think, needs to work with families and communities and businesses to be there to help relieve some of the effects of inflation, and to be a partner to the Fed and to, our Treasury Secretary. But look, one of the things that we need to do to help fight inflation is to get more people to work. To help open up some of these supply chains, to make sure that there are more goods available, right? And so one of the things that is holding people back from working is a lack of access to childcare. There were 2 million women who left the workforce during coronavirus, and that happened because they had to stay, somebody had to be with the kids, do an online school. And even now, kids get sent home. My children are in school, but there was an outbreak a couple of weeks ago at my daughter's school, and she was home for a week, right? How are parents expected to negotiate that and keep a job, right? So it's really essential that every family who wants it has access to affordable, high quality childcare, so that those people are available to join the workforce. This year in the Maryland legislature, we passed several bills to help provide additional funding for our child care centers, but more is needed. I think the comptroller's office especially should be working with the Maryland State Department of Education, which oversees and helps regulate our child care centers, working with them to help streamline the process, to remove barriers to opening, obviously keeping everything safe, but making sure that these small businesses have the support they need to stay open, stay in place, and do what they need to do so that people can get to work.
Okay. So we talked about small businesses a little bit ago. What do you think are some things that would help small businesses succeed that aren't related to taxes?
So there are a number of things I think that we can do to support our small business community. So one is that it will say we need to make sure that the comptroller's office is there to really be an advocate for small businesses. And I think we need to work cohesively in developing inter and intra-governmental resources to support infrastructure for job creation and corporate development, right? Like opening lines of communication between business and government, and prioritizing educating businesses about existing state and local programs and making sure that they work. Like when we set up a program, that it actually works for businesses. Two, we've got to simplify all our forms. When you want to open a business, you've got to go to, the comptroller's office, Department of Commerce, SDAT, maybe your local government, so many places. And we're all one government, right? We need to be able to streamline this. So I will push for creation of a simple small business portal that will provide small businesses with a single site for tracking their good standing with the state, as well as a history of all their paid and outstanding taxes, debts, fines, updated information, anything they need all in one place, right? They have one EIN number, they can have one login right there online that all of the agencies feed into. We should also streamline our minority, veteran, and small business certification programs. Ours is the oldest, our program is the oldest in the country, but it's sort of intimidating for many new business owners and who are already experiencing barriers to successful entrepreneurship. And we need to streamline it, make it easier, and have the chief procurement officer work with the Department of General Services and MDOT to really streamline that program. And then, I think incentives and capital for early stage startups are essential. Making sure that we're building more capital availability here in the state for startups and our scalable businesses is really essential as well. And I look forward to working around that. So, yep.
Okay. Am I pushing your time at all, or can I ask another question?
I have just a couple more minutes. This has been great.
Okay. Yeah. So about the small business thing, like it's a very common thing that both Republicans and Democrats do, is that they both kind of like virtue signal to small businesses and such like that. Some small businesses are a big employer of employees in Maryland and throughout the United States. However, my criticism of them is that they have an extremely high rate of failure. Maryland has a 65% rate of failure after 10 years, which is pretty much in the middle of the pack with national average. After 1 year, there's 18% of them fail. After 5 years, 50% of them fail. According to Council of State and Local Business Taxes, Maryland businesses pay the lowest share of state and local taxes, with businesses taxes accounting for 30.7% of total taxes collected in the state, compared with 44.3% for the national average. Further, Maryland ranks fourth for the lowest total state and local business taxes paid per dollar of net government spending that benefits businesses. So I kind of about the small business thing, like it's a very common thing that both Republicans and Democrats do, is that they both kind of like virtue signal to small businesses and such like that. Some small businesses are a big employer of employees in Maryland and throughout the United States. However, my criticism of them is that they have an extremely high rate of failure. Maryland has a 65% rate of failure after 10 years, which is pretty much in the middle of the pack with national average. After 1 year, there's 18% of them fail. After 5 years, 50% of them fail. According to Council of State and Local Business Taxes, Maryland businesses pay the lowest share of state and local taxes, with businesses taxes accounting for 30.7% of total taxes collected in the state, compared with 44.3% for the national average. Further, Maryland ranks fourth for the lowest total state and local business taxes paid per dollar of net government spending that benefits businesses. So I kind of illustrate that to say, like, I don't see a strong relation between the tax rate and the success of Maryland businesses. So, how is making these portals easier going to increase their success rate? And
Sure.
do you agree? Do you agree with my assessment right there, by the way?
Sure. I would say first, I think I need to look up everything you just cited, but small businesses are, as much as they have a high failure rate, they are the lifeblood of the US economy. They create 2/3 of all net new jobs. They are what drive innovation. They drive competitiveness. They're what get us new products. So yes, small businesses fail. But as I always teach my kids, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes, right? And a lot of those small businesses that fail, the first time they fail, the person gets up and they say, okay, what happened? I didn't have enough capital, or I located in the wrong place, or, I didn't do X or Y in the way that I should. And then they start another one, and that one becomes, Facebook, right? Whatever it is, like, things grow and thrive. But small businesses are essential job creators. I mean, they just are. And how we build wealth in America is through business ownership, right? The two biggest parts of building wealth in America are home ownership and business ownership. And so if we want to build a strong economy, we have to be supporting entrepreneurs. There's no other way to build job creation or to build wealth. And to help tackle the racial wealth divide, we have to make sure that Black Marylanders have access to the same capital that white Marylanders do. Because Black-owned businesses are turned down for loans at least twice the rate of white-owned businesses. And Black women right now are some of the fastest growing entrepreneurs in the country, but are also turned down for loans at a high rate, which stymies their growth and in the end can help contribute to their businesses failing. So we absolutely need to support small businesses. They are, even though many of them fail, many of them don't, and those small businesses become our employers. Small businesses account for, I want to say it's almost half of all economic activity in the country. And so it's not just about the percentage of taxes that they pay, it's about the amount of economic activity that they create, right? My family, we live in Fells Point. We live in Fells Point because, in part, we have a ton of amazing small businesses around us, right? It's a great area where you can shop and you can eat and you can do whatever you need to do, all without getting into a car. And so they create communities, and that's not always quantifiable in taxes in the way that perhaps the report you cited is counting. So our comptroller needs to do what it can to help lower that failure rate and help businesses thrive and create a stronger and diverse economy. So great question. Thanks for this interview. Really interesting.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot, Brooke. Yeah, so let's wrap up there. Do you want to tell people where they can find out more about you, what's your website, what your Twitter is?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. Thanks for all your interviews you've been doing and really interesting. I am Brooke Lierman. I am running to be Maryland's next state comptroller, and you can learn more about me at brookelierman.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Brookie Lierman. You can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Brooke Lierman for Maryland. And, get out there and vote. Mail-in ballots get mailed out today. Crazy, really exciting. And then, of course, election day, the primary election is July 19th this year. And then there's early voting in early July as well. So thrilled to be here. Thanks for doing this and spreading the word. And I've loved spending so much time on the shore. I was just there in Cambridge last week at the packing plant, was in Easton the week before, honeymooned on St. Michael's many years ago. So excited to be able to spend more time there and work with you as your next comptroller.